Hi guys, so today I am joined by my husband Sean, I am Elle, and we are going to be chatting about the first season of the show, The Promised Neverland, which honestly you guys don't even need to watch this video. You can just go watch the show.
Save your time.
So it's kind of going to be a gush fest, a little bit of info. If you can go into it blind, I would say would be the best way to do it, because we didn't know what we were getting into.
We didn't know anything.
So we just kind of jumped in. There's only one season out so far, and it is... I'm not kidding. I think the best paced first season of anything.
We watched all of it right in a row.
And he is usually kind of a sleepy bear. At a certain time, it's his bedtime, and he goes to bed.
That's true.
And he was like, no, we're watching. Once we got to, honestly, the first episode. After the first episode, we're like, well, we got to see what happens after this, because the first episode has such an amazing ending, and you get really creepy vibes throughout the whole first episode, and then...
And I think at some point with a lot of shows, like, I'll be like, wow, that first episode was great, we should watch the next. And then, like, at some point you hit an episode, you're like, I'm going to go to bed. You know, like, it's just not...
It's a lull.
This show...
Just never let up.
12 episodes, I was like, next.
This is a... rated mature shonen, which is kind of confusing. So it's very dark. It has very heavy themes. I would categorize it as dystopian fantasy horror. Would you say?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to categorize. You follow these kids that are... The main characters are all roughly 11 years old. They live in this orphanage. They're all waiting to get adopted, basically. Things are not... what they seem. I feel like that's where you might want to not know much more. The idea that there's not everything as it seems, it's a lot darker and heavier, and the kids find out some things that they're not meant to know, and it leads them to decide that they might want to
get out of there.
Yeah.
I knew going into this, I had heard that this show with an orphanage and cute little kids was way darker than you'd expect. And I thought, well, it's, how dark can that be? It would be pretty dark. I was very surprised. And the thing is, I also want to say, you don't have to wait long.
You do not wait long.
First episode, I don't think that's a spoiler. First episode, you'll know,
you'll see
what's happening.
You'll see. So the pacing...
That was my face.
That's what makes the pacing so good. I do think sometimes with anime, and just shows in general, that first episode, I found with a lot of other animes that you kind of have to tell people, oh, you just got to get past the first arc, or you got to get through the first, season or something. You a lot of times have to kind of tell people to push through to the end of the first episode. You don't have to push through anything. The whole season, I feel like is magnificently paced. Mm-hmm. There's never a dull moment. There's so many twists. The villainous roles are I don't think I've said out loud so many times, just murder them, just kill them. There's so many WTF moments in the show.
Weird sidebar though, the music in the show is amazing.
Beautiful and dark. With a lot of other manga with these, and animes I should say, with these age characters, you get a lot of action, and you really don't get action in this. Kind of a psychological horror almost too. The show itself plays around, I'm going to call it camera work, but this orphanage, there's a lot of hallways, and the ambiance of it all, they have lanterns and the lighting and the way that they move the camera up and down, or the way sometimes it just sits as a character walks, is really well done. And then that combined with the sound effects of a door creaking, the typical stuff, but other ones too. They just have, the sound is perfect. I feel like the music that they pick and the sound effects and the camera work, again, the way they kind of go around hallways, it's so well done.
I think, comparing it to other things, I think the first episode at the beginning, you do have to put up with a tiny, tiny bit of kind of shonen-y, the character just gives exposition about what is happening. Like, I live in an orphanage, and these are my siblings. Like, it's not that bad, but you're like, okay, yeah, I can see that. But other things, and I'm in the minority maybe on this, but I'm not the biggest fan of Death Note because I hate. Well, I shouldn't say hate, but I'm not a huge fan of like the characters being like, I knew you would do this, and so I did this, and the other person like, oh, I did this. There's a little element of that between two characters. There's like some mind battles going on, which I kind of have to suspend disbelief because they're 11. But like, but it didn't annoy me. Like, I feel like it was like the right level. Like the things they came up with, I thought, well, that actually makes sense. Like, it wasn't like some bizarre.
And some of the reveals and the twists, I thought you're like, wow, okay, these kids are really not in an unbelievable way, but some of the solutions they come up with are really clever. So it keeps you in the dark until those reveals happen. Whereas some shows, you kind of have the reveal as the viewer, like, you know, but then later the characters find out. And in this one, there will be times like, wait, what the heck was that thing though?
Yeah,
what was that thing? Or wait, I heard them say this. That's got to be a thing though, right? And then you find out. And
I think like, I also at the end I was like, that's kind of like a Naoki Urasawa manga. Like, it reminded me a little bit of Monster and 20th Century Boys, except a little bit more planned out. Like, sometimes I feel like
it does, like, it's not meandering
20th Century Boys I love, but sometimes it feels like a little flying by the seat of your pants. Like there's so many twists because he's kind of just like, I thought of this thing. It felt like very
really
methodical.
It was structured without feeling dull and predictable. And so when
I didn't predict anything.
And that's what's fun too. There's a couple things that once they drop certain hints, I'm like, wait, I think that's what this is.
Oh, I did predict like one.
Yeah, but there's always so many twists and turns, and the villainous characters, truly, you're not really sure what's up with them. But on the topic of it lacking a meandering feel, I love Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, but I feel like there's definitely some episodes where you're like, what are we doing here? It's never had a moment that felt wasted. I never felt like, ugh, okay, so I gotta get through this cliche scene. The only cliche, of course, the characters all have crazy hair. And they, like, you have the kid that gets his hands in his pockets and he's real edgy.
Yeah, I call him the Killua.
The Killua of the show.
From Hunter x Hunter.
And they all have, like, the main character, Emma, has, like, chocobo hair.
That's true.
That's the cliches I want in my anime.
Yeah. And again, I feel like I keep, like, sort of knocking other things, and I'm not trying to, but, like...
This is just so perfect.
Yeah, like, like, Shonen, a lot of it has, like, the power of friendship. And there's kind of that element too, but again, it didn't feel like
it made
they
sense.
really have to band together here. Like, this is some serious stuff. So it didn't bother me. And like Emma as a character, I really like Emma. Emma's like the most nice person.
Norman. So the characters,
them, yeah.
Despite the show being incredibly dark, the characters are all so wholesome, so many of them. You just feel for these kids. You're like, man, I just freaking want these kids to get out of there and get safe. There's some moments, anytime a kid cries in that show.
Yeah, it's devastating.
You're just like, oh no, and you want to hug them.
There's like a powerlessness about them that is pretty devastating. You're like, you're 11. That's horrible. The stakes are so high. Yeah.
They're so high. The friendship elements, I think, are really beautifully done. And the characters are just they're so sweet. I just want to hug all of them, and I want to help all of them.
And I'll also say, and I'm sure maybe we don't need to say this, but these kids don't have powers. This isn't like, Alphonse and Edward. Like, okay, when they get in trouble, you're like, oh no, I hope they're okay. But at the end of the day, they can use, like, magical powers to get out of trouble. These are, like, defenseless little kids.
And the show does a good job of showing that, even in how, when you have the characters next to the adults and you see them, they look so small.
Yeah, they're like looming.
It like is projecting that helplessness, the fact that they are so small and their stakes are so high, and it's kind of done through the artwork, which is another thing I want to mention. The artwork is, I feel like the colors that they pick are sort of symbolic, and like all the kids wear their little school uniforms that look like this, and there's something about the monotony of it all that contributes to the horror elements. Like, the colors are all very similar, and they all kind of have the sameness about them, which allows, I think, the characters themselves to shine. And the art style, I would not say, is particularly beautiful or like there's a ton of detail. It's quite simple.
But it works.
But it works really well. The absence of color in the orphanage, I think...
And the color of the outside, though.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
There might be something there.
Yeah,
wow.
It's just so good.
We're very deep.
When we finished that show, we were hyped. It's not like we watched the whole show and then we're like, good thing it's over, I'm sleepy. We had so much energy because we were freaking out about how good it was. I messaged my friends at 1 a.m. to be like, oh my gosh, this show, you have to go watch the show. Or if they'd seen it, like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I watched this.
Waiting for season 2 eagerly.
Yes.
January, supposedly, hopefully.
So amazing. And for those that are wondering, we did watch the dub. And I know a lot of people are very picky. I thought the voice acting was very good. It's just so good. It's hard to be even coherent.
And I know I'm, like, repeating myself, but, like Killua and Hunter x Hunter is, like, the same age, but also, like, the most deadly assassin in the world, or, you know, whatever. And you're just like, oh, okay. But these are, like... I was very concerned about these kids. And I think the other thing is, like, it very early on shows you what can happen.
Right, so you're on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, like...
Fearful.
Exactly. Fearful. Like, I don't generally get anxious watching a show, but I got, like, a little anxious. Like,
yeah. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Yeah. I will add, too, that I think sometimes in shows you have the character who is just the absolute smartest or the absolute most powerful, and you don't really fear for them. All of these characters had, I feel like, real personalities. Like, you have the one character who maybe isn't as smart, but he's so lovable and he loves his friends and he just wants to help and he's really strong. Then you have the girl who's kind of more subdued, introverted and kind of fearful, but really caring and sweet. You have the one that's really hopeful and maybe a little too idealistic, and you have the edgy one.
The other characters call her naive like 30 times. Yeah.
Then you have the edgy one, and then you have the other character who is kind of just this
nice and
sweet,
smart
cinnamon roll, smart kid but they all respect each other. It's not like they all are like, well, this person needs to be more like me. They all have their strengths. When you're done watching the show also, you need to go watch this video. I'm going to have it linked down below. That summarizes the first season. I think it's called The Promised Neverland, basically. And it's the funniest thing. So it's one of my favorite videos on the internet. Everyone should go watch this show.
I want to go watch it again.
I know. I feel like I just want to sit and watch it again. I don't know if we have too many other things to add. The imagery of it is fantastic. The characters are fantastic. The pacing is the best of any first season.
And kind of going off of that too, with the pacing, I'm comforted in the fact knowing that the manga is over and it was at 20 volumes.
We're not going to dilly-dally.
Pretty reasonable, and I know that sounds pretty maybe weird that I'm glad that this thing I like is over, but I don't want...
We're not going to have a Game of Thrones situation.
Yeah, I don't want like this kind of like, we'll just go on forever type thing. Like some things do.
I'll add to, there's nothing, if you're nervous about it being really scary that you can't sleep, or that the imagery is really horrifying and disgusting, it's not graphic, really. I mean, you're like, what? In a couple of parts, but I wouldn't say...
Yeah, again, I feel like it's more psychological.
Yeah. The fear of what can happen. But yeah, it's not really grotesque violence or anything like that, so... a kid could potentially be in the room, and you wouldn't be like, no, close your eyes.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
For me.
It's just perfection. I don't think I have a single complaint, which is...
I have 0 complaints.
Yeah. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Then go watch that video I'll have linked. And we'll see you guys later. Bye.